The Timeshift.
Hello and welcome to this review on the latest episode of Doctor Who, this one titled The Devil's Cord. Now, I would have a wacky opening joke to go with this, but quite frankly, this is the third video I've reviewed today. We're in the middle of a heat wave, I've had to switch the air conditioning off to listen to these episodes and to record these videos, so I'm a little bit warm, and I just want to get down into brass tacks of it by talking about the writing, and we're going to talk about some of the positives, the things I enjoyed the most about this particular episode. And I have to say, and I'd hate to repeat myself from the previous review, but something I really do love about this episode is just the sheer bonkers, balls to the wall creativity that's on the show with this particular episode. This is an episode which, I'm going to be quite honest with you, I had no idea about it going into it. I had an idea about who the guest star was and what may be coming along with that, and quite frankly, the way that everything was boiled out and just built out from this, I have to say, is just fantastic. Once again, we're like with the previous episode, Russell T Davies taking a core idea and building it out in a way which other writers, quite frankly, would not do. This is an episode where the main villain is a god of music, and they want to destroy all music to create something else. I don't know exactly the correct thought process of it, forgive me, I've only been a few minutes since watching the episode. However, that said, Russell T Davies does not just leave it at that. All the writers would just go, okay, they're wanting to destroy music and that's it, that's all we'd get with that. But with this, we end up seeing the ramifications of that, not just in the immediate term when they arrive in the 1960s, but later on to more modern and more recent times, and I like that element of it. I will admit that the whole thing of the Doctor taking Ruby to the future and seeing the destroyed Earth is just repeating a moment that we saw in the episode Pyramids of Mars back from the 4th Doctor's run, which, okay, that's a fine reference to make with it. Me being an older school Doctor Who fan, I knew what the reference is there, but still, that is going to be a very powerful moment for a lot of people seeing that, and it is going to answering a lot of questions as to, well, if Ruby's still okay, that means everything turns out in the end, which, yes, it does, but we do get the shock revelation of, yes, everything's still in play and everything is very much still in flux, but not that kind of flux. I like that. It is an improvement, certainly, on the previous episode, where it was just exposition, exposition, exposition. In this one, we get a little bit more of that feeling from the first run of Russell T Davies in the Christopher Eccleston era, where we get to have the questions that we as an audience would have being answered naturally, being answered within the action and the series of events before us, rather than being delivered in exposition. Granted, there were some moments in the exposition in this episode which I think were good, but I think that they were undermined by the pacing of the editing. It feels as though they did their absolute utmost to just keep things ticking over as fast as possible, keep the timing, which I understand, maybe it's a reference itself to the fact this is a music-based episode, but at the same time, there was a moment where the Doctor's talking about the past and not knowing about whether Susan is still alive or he's dead or whatever, and we just get that sudden cut to Ruby hugging him, and whilst that is a cute moment, whilst that is an emotional moment, just the way that was editing, the pacing of that just felt like there was a beat missing there, which I will grant you isn't really something you're talking about in writing, but hey, we don't really talk about the directing, we talk about that as part of the writing. Odd, I'll grant you, but still, we'll go on from there. One of the things I really do love is just how, like I say, the idea has been built upon. We see the ramifications of a world without music, beyond just the silly jokes of the Beatles and Cilla Black singing terrible songs. We see this alternate history look into the world. We have that shot of the newspaper where the Soviet Union's about to invade Finland, which, as the Doctor points out, that didn't happen, so we end up seeing the repercussions of a world without music and the extended time that there's had. And I do like that. This isn't just, oh, here's the villain, and whilst they are this massive threat to everything, they're largely disconnected to the wider world. We see the consequences of their actions and their presence, which I really do like. I'm wondering exactly how they kind of got away with the fact that the past 40 years up to that point without music has now been solved, but I suppose we could just turn around and say, okay, the Maestro's an a-causal being and just everything healed up naturally, so that's fine, that's okay. Like, those minor things I have no issue with. More recent times when you got people blowing up buildings and everything's fine after the end of it and no one ever mentions it, sure, whatever, but whatever, we'll move on. When it comes to the actual character of the Maestro, I want to talk about them. I want to talk about the Maestro. I really want to talk about the Maestro. I'm going to do that in the performance section because I'm going to just say, I think they're probably the strongest villain that we've had in the modern run of Doctor Who. I think that they are fantastic, and I wish that we had just seen more of them. That opening scene with them, that was bloody amazing. I loved every single moment of that whole opening sequence. All the pre-title stuff was just brilliant. From how it is written to how it is performed, that was brilliant. I loved it. I really did love that. Something I'm a little bit more ambivalent on is the whole dance sequence towards the end of the episode. Yeah, it makes sense. It works with the whole tone of the episode. I'm not entirely keen on it. There is a part of me that feels that the only reason why we've got a double build today is because of Eurovision, and this is them doing some kind of connection into that, even though there's no connection with it whatsoever. But hey ho, I mean, that's broadcasting for you. But still, the episode itself was a ton of fun, and everything that I had issues, well, almost everything that I had issues with in the previous episode is done, certainly as far as the writing side of things is concerned. The pacing is a lot more on point here. It gives us a lot more time to breathe and understand and comprehend everything that we're seeing before us. Not as much feels quite as rushed, and anything that does feel rushed feels more like a consequence of the editing more so than the story itself. I will admit there was a point midway through the episode where it felt as though we were getting into the final act of it. That wasn't the case. I think there was another 20 minutes left of the episode, but still, that further 20 minutes that we did end up getting was a lot of fun. I do wish that they'd played around a lot more with the world without music concept, that they had built upon that more and just did something more with it, as I feel that was a rich mine that wasn't sufficiently mined for my liking. But still, there's a lot to enjoy with this particular episode. It is certainly feeling a lot more fun and adventurous than something we've had in Doctor Who for quite some time, and I don't mean that as being a dig against Chris Chibnall or Stephen Moffat, but it is the kind of just wild, adventurous feeling that I really do love about Doctor Who, and was one of the major things I loved about the Patrick Troughton era of Doctor Who, just that sheer mad creativity that we are now seeing again here. That is something I really do love. We get further teases as to the origins of Ruby Sunday, which, as I've mentioned in the previous episode, I'm really not sure how to feel about all of that. I am just, in general, just not a big fan of the idea of being the companion being this major universal entity. Just feels overplayed at this point, and whilst that certainly hasn't been the case in a literal sense with the companions of the modern run, they do feel as though they are the centre of the universe more often than not, and this is building up to what I fear will end up being a reveal that they are another celestial being, they're another one of these god entities, or are connected to the god entities in some regard. I really don't know about that, and we get the tease of the from the Maestro of, oh, the waiter, or the one that waits, or whatever, they're gonna get you next, and, God, I mean, maybe that's a tease that the one that waits is gonna be Susan, because they did have the exposition of Susan and the fact that the Doctor is a grandfather, and again, I like the whole exchange with them on the roof talking about it. I did feel as though they were setting up for some kind of payoff in the episode. Like towards the end, before we get into the big dance number, the Doctor mentioned there's always a twist, and there was a part of me in the back of my mind expected to have a moment where we'd have a shot of someone playing this song that the Doctor's recorded, and we'd pull out, and it'd be Susan listening to the song, and the first Doctor giving a very discerning, like, oh, this is a load of rubbish, this modern music kind of thing. That would have been a cute moment, but we don't get that, of course. We get the ending closing number. We get the thing that the Harbinger is still around, even though I'm not entirely sure how they can be, because it seems that, you know, without the Maestro about, why would they still exist, as they seem to be an extension of the Maestro, but still, I'm not going to lean on that too far. It feels as though we're building up into something bigger for the end conclusion of this particular season, which I'm interested to see. There is a part of me that fears that it may become a clusterfuck of cosmic, major, mega entities doing this and the other, which we'll see where all that goes. I mean, you have to give it to Russell T Davies. He does have these big bombastic ideas, and I think that they more often than not land certainly a lot more successful than Stephen Moffat's or Chris Chibnall's ideas ever did, but we'll see where we end up going with it. I'm still a tad skeptical, because I think this is leading into territory that I'm not terribly keen on, like I say, with the old idea of the companion being this mega central part of the universe, but I can at least enjoy the journey thus far, because the episode itself is a lot of fun. I will admit, if I'm going to talk about a negative for the episode, I do feel as though the Maestro as a character up until this moment has been built up within the press releases and the press kits that they were going to be the next big cosmic threat, that they were effectively going to be the end of season villain, and here they are being knocked out 2 episodes in, which, okay, I mean, that's a decision to be made. I can't say that's necessarily the one I would go with, as I think that, you know, let's look at it like this. This is... The episode with the toy maker was a couple episodes ago, so we've had 2 mega celestial god entities being defeated by the Doctor in the course of about 3 episodes, which, that makes me worry about power creep, which is something I really shouldn't have to worry about with a series like Doctor Who, but again, we'll see where we all go with this. You have to trust the process with this, and I think that with Doctor Who, it's one of those series where you can't just stomp your feet and say, I hate this is going nowhere, at least until you've got to the end of the journey, because you never know where all these things end up going, certainly as regards certain storylines, because, hey, I think about how many videos I've done over the past 10 years or so connected to this series, how many theories I've come up with as to where the series is going to end up going, and it doesn't go that way. You know, you never know where this is going to end up going, but I know where we're going, and it's time to talk about the performances. Now, I have to say that compared to the previous episode, everything is a lot more solid and a lot more good. I know that isn't good English, but hey, give me a break. This is my 3rd video prep to record today during a heat wave. I think that Kuti Gatwa is far stronger as the Doctor in this episode than in the previous one. It will be interesting to look at the production notes to see which episode was filmed first. I think that the previous episode and the Church on Ruby Road were filmed after this, which, hey, I suppose it ends up giving more credence to the idea that it was just bad directing in the previous episode that made Kuti Gatwa seem so odd, because in this one, they do a really fantastic job. They really are nailing a feel that has echoes, and I think this is what I mentioned in the Church and Ruby Road episode, that they have kind of flares of the 3rd Doctor, the John Pertwee, I nearly said Sean, no, the John Pertwee Doctor here and there. Not quite, but you can see the echoes of that Doctor echoing forward, which I can respect, but at the same time, they are starting to build themselves and build their own entity, which again, I can respect. I want them, whenever it comes to a new Doctor, whenever it comes to a new actor playing the Doctor, I want a sense of the familiar, so what we know that this is still the Doctor, but as well as them bringing their own flair to that, and that is certainly something that we get in this particular episode. I mean, hell, this episode, once again, ends with a song and dance number. Hey, Kuti Gatwa can sing and dance, so I suppose we're just going to lean into that as much as possible, which, fair enough. I mean, Sylvester McCoy was a trained magician, so there was plenty of times in the classic run where they did linked into stuff with that, so it makes perfect sense that they would end up doing with that. I feel that Millie Gibson, again, was a solid element of the episode. The jury's still out on her, I have to say, because I still have these feelings and these echoes of companions past. I see her and I just see Clara, and I think that we need something to better develop her and to make her feel like a more of her own entity. And this isn't helped by the fact that with the story, we have the lean into the one who waits, and at the back of my mind I'm thinking, oh god, are we going to have a Clara Oswald cameo in the not too distant future? But we'll soon see about that. I think that where they end up going to go with that, I don't know. Where they're going to go with her as a character and where performatively, I still don't know. I was about to say something potentially rude, so we'll end up moving on. I think that Jinx Monsoon as Maestro is by far and away the best thing in this episode. They were absolutely fan-flipping-tastic. From the moment they first appear on screen right until the end, they are an absolute tour de force, and I loved every single second of it. They had so much charisma, such a presence, such a... I don't even know how to describe it. Just this brilliant, sinister theatricality to them that I just think was utterly brilliant. It's the kind of thing that I think that Neil Patrick Harris went for when they played the Toymaker, but regrettably fell short of delivering on that. I think that this is one of the best villain performances in the modern run of Doctor Who. Like I say, from moment one in the episode, they had a presence. They were brilliant, just brilliant. I can't put into words just how great that they did with that. They're able to ride that line of having that charisma and that intrigue about them that made you want to see more of them, yet at the same time had a dark, sinister energy to them that made them feel like a legitimate threat. This isn't like in the classic run where you had the rather, I don't even know, there was an episode from, I think, the third Doctor's run where there was that hyper-intelligent computer and they had just this rather jovial talking voice, which was a little bit too theatrical and a little bit too silly. And in this case, we don't get that here. I think that Jinx Monsoon plays it absolutely pitch perfectly. In a way that, and to just look into another things, a way that I think that the performers in the modern run have failed to do with the Master, because it's that same kind of thing. They're playing into this manic, theatrical sinisterness that regrettably every single actor that has played the Master has failed to do, not because they are bad actors, but quite simply because the Master is not that kind of character. And this week, we get a character that is that, played by someone who can do that, and it is all the richer for it. Absolutely bloody brilliant. If we're going to be slightly more negative, I think that the guys playing the Beatles weren't the best. I mean, even just beyond the fact they didn't look anything like the Beatles. The accents weren't that strong. Their performances weren't that strong either, which is regrettable, bearing in mind just what a central part of the episode that they are. I mean, you could literally have said... You know, I tell you what, though. In that moment where they start playing the bad song, there was a part of me that was wondering if the joke was, oh, these guys aren't actually the Beatles. They're another act that the record label created to try and bank on the fame of the Beatles, and that was going to be the joke of it. But no, they're the Beatles, kind of. I mean, I don't want to be rude to them, but it just feel like a case of just get whoever we can get that can do a Scouse accent and kind of looked a bit like the Beatles, and just go from there and hope that no one notices and that everyone just kind of accepts them for looking close enough to it. Which is regrettable. I think that's the only bum note to the episode. I suppose the other way you could look at it is that this is another history-based episode where the historical characters are just kind of there, which regrettable, but I suppose there's only so much we could do with characters or historical figures that are still, well, at least two of them are still alive. So we'll move on to the overview and just say that this episode was a lot of fun, almost, well, yes, from start to finish. There was a few, no pun intended, bum notes here and there. I think that it just ultimately comes down to some bad editing at the end of the day, as I think that's the thing that thwarted it. I'm not 100% keen on the end dance sequences of everything in the episode. I think that's the thing that looks the cheapest for a TV series which now has £9 million put into it by Disney, plus the £1 million from the BBC, £10 million per episode. The fact that we end up getting an ending sequence that just feels like anything out of any given series of Strictly Come Dancing just feels a little bit out of place to me. Now, as I mentioned in the previous episode, I am just going to briefly touch upon the whole thing about having the double header release thing. And I know I'm conscious of the fact that we're rapidly running out of time now, so I'll just write it down succinctly, and I might discuss in greater detail when I come to do the season-long review, but I really am not happy about the fact that 2 episodes were released on the same day as one another, and that they are going to broadcast as a double bill. I know that might sound insane for me to say, bearing in mind that I am a long-term Doctor Who fan, that I've been doing reviews of Doctor Who for the better part of a decade now, but still, I don't like that, and I'm saying that as a fan. Ignore the whole YouTube broadcaster thing for a moment. Having 2 episodes back-to-back just... it doesn't feel right to me, because it ends up feeling as though it takes something away from the mystique of the show. I think that Doctor Who is one of those series where you need the time between the episodes to let things process and to understand what's going on here. This is not the kind of program that you binge watch, and this is coming from someone that used to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday and a Sunday to watch a marathon of Doctor Who on UK Gold. I don't think that it really works for that kind of marathon viewing. Modern Doctor Who certainly doesn't work for it. And what if I'm gonna be honest, if the only major negative that I have when I get to the end of this series is the fact that 1 week they had a double bill, I'm gonna be laughing. I'm gonna be happy with that. I mean, of all the bad points you could have for a season, that's the only bad one. I'll take it. But anyway, let me know what you thought about it in the comment section down below. There's not gonna be a comment corner with this particular episode because I'm recording everything back to back, and quite frankly, I don't have a time machine. I can't travel to the future to read the comments that you're going to leave on the previous video before it goes out. I might do a marathon comment corner in the next video. We'll soon see about. But anyway, thank you all for listening and see you next time. Goodbye. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, click the bell and do all the YouTubey stuff that YouTube wants you to do. Go on, it'll do me a power of good. Until next time, my friends, goodbye!